And dramatic countdown over. Leslie Robb. Thank you so much. Leslie Robinson, sorry. I'm so used to calling you Leslie Robb.
It's Leslie Robb. Robinson is my mother-in-law.
So the one and only, arguably, I think, I kind of want to call you like a skitarist, like a skit person. I don't know why
Well,
skitarist comes out of the
okay.
woodwork there, but
If we're gonna take that as a title, Lucas.
absolutely skitarist. I mean, I'm rarely funny, but hopefully that one is all right. But anyway,
Well
you
played.
are a person of a very intensive background. As I was like kind of running through your resume, I was just going through because again, you kind of get into the routine of like getting ready for podcasts, meeting new people, and like sometimes,
Hmm.
especially in education, you can talk about some things, and then I had a few things that made me go, like when I
Yeah.
was looking at it, 'cause I was like, whoa. So anyway, first off,
Yeah.
you're a teacher, you're a comedian. Please tell me you have a like a traumatic, maybe not traumatic, but a slightly horrible bus driver story that you can share if you have any. Because I guess like when were you a bus driver? How did you get into that? Like is it before teaching, after teaching? I kind of tell me how you get into that lane. Mr. Clark After Dark is brought to you by Luxy. That's Luxy. Luxy is the standard for modern dating as it gives you a greater understanding of any potential match's intentions and background before you make your move. Swiping endlessly in other dating apps can be exhausting and often leave you with only the leftovers in your dating pool. Luxy is an exclusive platform with just a 10 to 15% acceptance rate, as well as a profile and income verification feature so you can be confident you're only connecting with those who meet your high standards. The community guidelines emphasize safety, trust, and equality by strictly prohibiting scams, explicit content, and harassment. 2025 is your year to stop settling. With Luxy, there is no luck involved, just real connections with people who truly match what it is you are looking for. Download the Luxy app today to see if you qualify for a better chance at finding the right person for you. And now, back to the show.
Okay, so bus driving came about my second year of teaching when I transferred to a new district that was like out in the country. And so they were short on bus drivers, but also short on substitute bus drivers. But so we as teachers had to all get our school bus driving license to work as substitute teachers to help them out. Yeah. So I remember like getting to like seventh block or seventh period, and someone would step into my class, and then I would go and do a bus route for the middle school, even though I taught at the high school because they were short. Yeah,
Crazy.
it's crazy.
And you were bus driving for middle school students. Like
Yeah,
I
it
see
still
them
makes me
in the
cry.
classroom. Yeah, like I guess, did you see anything surprising with just a lot of kids running around being annoying? Like that's kind of sounds awful.
Well, the crazy part is I refused to teach middle school. Like I did it for 1 year.
Yeah.
So driving them on a bus, yeah, let's do that.
Yeah.
So yeah, so no, what's been crazy is a couple of years ago, I think it was like 2 years ago, driving the school bus now for high school. Now I drive for high school, and I was driving my bus route in the morning, and this bus driver who drove before me, her name was Miss Tripp, and her name is still in sticker letters on the bus because I'm too lazy to take it down. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Yeah.
Okay. So this boy gets on every morning, Miss Tripp, Miss Tripp, Miss Tripp. That was the lady's name. And I'm like, boy, I told you over and over again, that's not my name. And he's like, come on, Miss Tripp, Miss Tripp. I said, listen. Okay.
Okay,
So one
cool.
day I'm driving down the road, and you can see them in the mirror, and he gets up and he starts walking while I'm driving. I'm like, sit down. He goes, Miss Tripp, Miss Tripp, Miss Tripp. I said, okay, keep playing with me. I'm going to hit the brake. He goes, I'm going to tell my mom. So then, like most people will be worried about losing their job.
Yeah.
Not me. Because
No.
where they going to find the
They're not. Especially about that will drive the middle school bus. No one is taking that.
So he tells his mom calls transportation, and transportation is, appalled, and she's appalled. And there's no way that her son stood up on a
No.
bus and endangered his life. It was this driver's fault. And so they're like, oh my gosh, transportation's like, we don't tolerate this behavior. Can you tell us the driver's name? And they're like, and I'm like, ha, Miss Tripp don't work there no more. You see why I'm worried? Yeah. See why I'm worried? Because Miss Tripp don't work there no more. Tell on me all you want, little boy. You don't even know my name.
That's hilarious.
I'm
Leslie
just
Tripp.
saying.
No. He is the one who's now tripping. Yes, thank you. That
Legit.
was just set up for me the whole
Look
time.
at
I was
you.
waiting. I thought you were gonna say it. I was like, I gotta take it while it's there.
Look at you. Joke number 2. Look at you. Talking about you ain't no comedian. Look at you.
Cool me down. Cool me down. Cool me down.
You're
All right.
killing me.
And so I guess so much to ask you because like I've been seeing that you've been on the Bored Teachers podcast a few times, and you've been on the Bored Teachers comedy tour as well, or the Teachers Off Duty. Because I know
so Teachers Off Duty podcast. So Teachers Off Duty is the Bored Teachers podcast, and Bored Teachers comedy tour is the comedy tour.
Yes, and so how many shows did you do with that comedy tour, and did you find that intimidating going into? Because I know you've been doing stand up, but was there anything like those are like sold out theaters? Like I know the teaching crowd. Yeah. So talk to me about like kind of the shows and kind of how that went.
So my first Bored Teachers show, I was like, I'm sorry, who you want me? Like, okay. So I get in and it's insane, the energy. So the theaters are just amazing. So initially I was like a little bit intimidated because I had to shift my set to fit, a broad spectrum of teachers versus just like what I've taught, whatever. But the best part about it is I've taught all grade levels, so I could actually like relate. So it was amazing. Like, and it has been amazing. It's literally the most rewarding thing in my career thus far is walking onto a Bored Teacher stage at a sold out theater and hearing the cheers and people just excited to see me. It's just amazing. It's mind blowing.
And I had a conversation with Andrea Kaspari Spears, who I believe, I don't know if you were, I had her on the podcast there last year, and I had Jay Yoder as well, like a few of the people from the crew on so far. But because I asked her, I was like, are teachers difficult to entertain because we're all so dead inside? That was my comment, and she was like, it's actually the exact opposite. They're just ready to like, no, she said that she went up and just said data-driven instruction, and the whole place just like erupted with laughter. So I'm like, I guess if you don't mind sharing, like what kind of bits did you have or anything that like just absolutely nailed with the teacher crowd?
Okay, so one of my favorite, well, you know how it is, like we speak lingo that only we get.
Yeah.
And so people are often like, oh my gosh, like, that's why I think when Andrea, you said, got on stage, you said data driven, whatever, because nobody else knows what we're talking about. Yeah. So let's see, my go-to favorite that everybody explodes over is when I talk about me going to the gym. I make this joke about going to the gym and checking in with the receptionist, and she sends out this personal trainer. I'm getting my free personal training session, and the personal trainer is like this huge Dwayne The Rock Johnson looking dude, and I'm like, I'm not doing that. And then she's like, what's the problem? I'm like, you gonna try to make me The Rock? I'm okay being a pebble. And then they're like, well, it would help us if you tell us some of your goals. I'm like, my goal is simple. I want to be able to bend over and tie my shoe without cutting off my own air supply. And so, she's like, well, I think you misunderstand what we do here. And I think you misunderstand me. So here's my 504 plan for the gym. It outlines all my accommodations and modifications necessary for the gym. And the crowd dies.
So it's 504. So again, apologies for the Canadian teacher lingo here, because is a 504 is like an individualized plan. Is that okay? All right, because you're in Virginia, right?
Yep.
Okay, yeah. Because honestly, it's like IEP, IPP. I feel like there's so many lanes you can go down with the IPP. So I guess when you go to Edmonton, IPP, which is a gold mine for any sort of joke, that's what we use in Alberta for an individualized program plan. So whatever, a 504.
So, like we have an IEP, which is, you guys have IEPs. No?
Well, it's IPP. So it's just like individualized program plan, yeah.
Okay, so then we have the
different
IEP.
acronyms.
We have the IEP, but we also have the 504. So 504 is a step down from an IEP or IPP. It's actually just an adjusted version of your instruction to fit the student's needs, not necessarily a formal IEP.
LSP, Learning Support Plan.
LSP.
An LSP, yeah. It's all on clever. It's all very. It's all, oh yeah.
Look at you helping me with my project. I'm just like, this is my LSP. Hold on, I got to write that down.
From Banff to Wetaskiwin, they're using the IPP and the LSP. As far as I know.
Okay, so I'm gonna say, here's my IPP. You think that'll be more of a hit, or should I say LSP? IPP.
I feel like
I think
IPP.
IPP.
It rolls off the tongue. Yeah, I think so.
The IPP. Okay, got
And
you.
so I guess like on top of the because it's been pretty cool for me to go from Alberta, which is like this very well, I always found it funny, and pardon my language here, is that when you would be in Alberta,
Huh?
I don't know if you know much about like Canadian politics, but like everyone has the bumper sticker that says "fuck Trudeau," which is like the prime minister, like saying like, "Oh, we hate him," but he's like a left wing guy. And then I come to New Brunswick and apologize the language here again.
Uh-huh.
It would say fuck Higgs, who is like the conservative guy. So it's like a
Okay.
very like polar opposite of the
Very
bumper
much so.
stickers. Yeah. And so have you noticed like even teachers are different in the different places that you've been? Like things that
Oh,
have
for
kind of
sure.
caught you off guard. So I like
For sure.
how are we weird and how are we different in different areas?
Well, like even just now, like think about it. Like our conversation just now, I'm talking about a 504 playing, waiting for you to bust out laughing, and you're like, "I'm sorry, what?"
Yeah.
Yeah,
Does
you're
that
like,
equal 9? I don't know.
so like even like the lingo that we all say that we think is just standard across the board, we
Yes.
often find is not standard across the board. Like I know that like we're all going board teachers is going to the UK this weekend. I'm like, this is gonna be interesting to see the difference in the
Yeah.
terminology too.
So I know they do a CPD is one
Hmm.
collaborative
You're like it's
something. I
collaborative
can't
blah
remember.
blah blah
I
blah.
talked to a few UK people and they'll probably just judge me for not remembering it now. But yeah, and so another kind of segue that made me go, is
Mm-hmm.
that I saw the school bus driver. I was like, okay, I got to know about. I mean, you're tripping clearly, and then you see that you've been on the board teachers comedy tour, but you've also got like a Christian comedy background.
Yes, I
Okay,
do.
so as a fellow man who grew up in the cloth, I guess, have you ever have you ever gone too far with a joke in a Christian environment where it's just been like, oh my God, pun intended, where you're like, I should not have said that? Because I
I was
guess
like, oh my
Mr. Clark After Dark is also brought to you by Jumping Bean Coffee. Jumping Bean Coffee is a premium, fair trade organic, and low carbon roasted coffee from the East Coast and is based out of Newfoundland. Some of their standout blends include the rich and flavorful Lighthouse Roast, the bold Deepwater Dark Roast, and of course the iconic Screech Rum flavored coffee. Whether you're supporting local, missing the taste of home, or simply looking to experience the best the East Coast has to offer, Jumping Bean Coffee has something for everyone. Click on the link today to secure your bag. And now, back to the show.
probably that kind of got rubbed the wrong way, you know, or it was a little slightly, you know, like it was Christian clean, but it wasn't quite
Yeah.
not dirty, but it wasn't dirty ish.
Yes.
So like there's this joke I do because I can't have children. And so there's this whole thing where, you know, like let's be for real. In the Christian world, it's like, oh my gosh, I pray that Jesus heals you. You know, and so like I
It's like
remember
you're
having
still 23 and no kids. It's like,
yeah,
what? No, it's not weird.
still yeah. And so, like, I have this joke where I do it on a Christian stage where it's like this, you know, this overly Christian seasoned lady in the church comes up to me and she puts her hand on my
Season is
stomach.
crazy.
And she puts her hand on my stomach and she's like, I pray that Jesus heals your womb. And I'm like, and I put my hand over hers and I say,
Yeah, I feel like is Virginia considered the South?
technically, yeah, I
Like
think so.
almost like you're kind of right on like you're starting to get closer to the South. But
Yeah,
yeah,
like
because
we have something called the Mason Dixon line. And I think, now listen, I am not a history connoisseur, so nobody correct me. But I think the Mason Dixon line, which defines the South, starts at Virginia, if I'm not mistaken. Don't
okay.
come to people in the comments. I don't know stuff.
Well, now I'm gonna put my weird history hat on. I think is it Virginia and Maryland that gave up land for Washington D.C. So that would kind of make
I
sense
think
for like
so.
a
Because
line.
like all three of us are together, Virginia, DC, and Maryland. So we're called the DMV because DC, Maryland, and Virginia are literally, we're all like right here in a line and you can get to each within like 2 hours.
Okay, all right, that makes sense. Yeah, but like think there's something to be said about like I just envision like a white Baptist woman who's just like had 9 children and she's 57 and she's got 38 grandchildren in the church and she's just Is that the one that comes up and touches your stomach instead of
Yes, but usually it's a black woman. Yes, it's more of a
Okay,
black
okay.
woman.
All right.
Well, actually, I take that back. I don't think
Okay.
it's a matter of like either white or black. I think it's more of like an older female in the church, like who's
Yes.
been in
Yeah.
church like for like 20 years, whether
She's
she's
like, I do this
black,
every
white.
Sunday. Like, this is not
Yeah,
weird.
exactly. That kind of lady.
It's like, why are you making it weird? I'm just touching your stomach. Like, why? It's
Yeah,
all
like
good.
why are you weird? Like, and I'm like, so yeah.
I love that. Yeah, because the Christian comedy, I feel like because I've noticed even for myself, like with my family growing up, like we were very
Yeah.
religious, but my wife's family, they were like kind of religious,
Hmm.
but I almost find that like they weren't traumatized enough. You know what I mean? It's like they like we went through the ringer with our humor and
Yeah.
going through it, and now if I'll make jokes like, in front of her family, everyone just gets like super uncomfortable. I'm like, guys, like just relax. Like I'll say some pretty crazy stuff, but anyway, it's fine.
I hear you. I hear you.
Yeah, so you got to
The
read the room
trauma from
still.
the religious trauma is real, bro.
Yeah, especially because like I'm from a small town in Newfoundland, and I know that probably means nothing to you, but it's pretty much like the small town where the pastor is the mayor kind of thing, and that's kind of the environment.
Yeah.
So it's pretty similar to the South, and Alberta, where you're going, is like the
Hmm.
Texas of Canada. So
Okay.
you got the big mega churches. It's kind of more that conservative crowd, but Edmonton is like the Austin of Texas. Like it's the big government city. So that's kind of what you should be
What I'm walking
ready.
into, Lucas. What am I
Yeah,
walking
but
into?
probably not as good of barbecue when you go to Edmonton, unfortunately. But
Uh,
I've heard great things about Austin down there.
yeah,
But
Austin here is killer. I would love to go visit Austin. So yeah.
I would. It's also on the. I don't like the word bucket list because it makes me feel like I have things to do before I die. But it's like I'll definitely go to Austin one day. Maybe host a big teachers podcast down there one time. That'd be fun. But
Hey, why not?
and so another thing that makes me go is from what I've heard, you've taught some middle school, some high school,
Mhm.
and you're going and you taught the guest service gold credential course for
Yes.
adult education. And I'm just like, I don't mean to just kind of resume spiel on you here, but these are something
It's really
I've never
fun.
heard of. But I also wanted to hear like, what was your experience teaching adults? I think that's kind of the main problem that teachers have is like being taught by someone how to do their job. You know what I mean? So that's like, I guess, how do you kind of navigate that? And like, what is the gold credential course?
Okay, so I taught two versions of adults. So I've taught adult high school for
Mm,
adults who are trying to get their high school diploma, GED, etc. But I've also taught the guest service gold program, believe it or not, which is very
mm,
timely for America right now if you've probably kept up to date. But
mm.
it is for basically our new immigrants who need jobs here. And
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I teach this course to help them get their certification. So it's a night school. And so it's night school. And so I teach usually about it varies, but it's like English is a second language, obviously because these are new immigrants. Well, new
Yes,
immigrants.
yeah,
All immigrants are new,
yeah,
Leslie. Okay.
yes. I guess,
Anyway,
yeah.
and so
Brand
I'm
new immigrants.
yeah, brand new. And I'm teaching them so they can walk away with some type of credential to help them get into different workplaces. So guest service gold is for the hotel and hospitality industry so that they can get that certification to help them understand like the basics of customer service and guest services when it comes
Okay.
to hotel, travel, and tourism. So a
Oh,
lot of them will
cool.
go and work in a hotel in some capacity from that program.
Cool. That's sweet. And so do you find that, because I remember I almost was about to sign up to tutor for ESL students, so English second language, would be the
Mhm.
same kind of thing. And I ended up getting a different job like right before I was at the start, so I didn't end up doing it. But I was like so stressed out. Like,
Yeah.
where do you even like? I was just like, where do you start? Like, if someone doesn't know the language, like that to me was always like, I don't know how to. I guess in my head, I'm like, I don't know how to introduce hello like without being condescending. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know
Yeah.
how to.
Like,
So I guess like,
hello.
yeah, how are
My
you?
name is Lucas.
So I guess like, how did you prep for that? Like, how did you kind of go? If you had some advice for someone going into, again, one teaching adults, but two like doing like ESL and that kind of stuff. Like, how was that? How did you kind of prep yourself for that?
It's honestly, don't underestimate a smile. When it comes to teaching people who do not speak English, do not underestimate the power of a smile. When you give them that smile, it calms them down so that they understand that you are there for them. And
Mm,
once they understand that you are on their side, you're not trying to do a gotcha or
yeah.
you know, some type of insane rigor that they can't keep up with. That smile is what initially breaks the ice to help them to
Mm,
get to the point that they can learn. So yeah, that's my biggest advice, because a lot of my students who I've taught, especially in ESL, whether it's been younger students or adults even, it's just been like, "You're so nice, ma'am. You're so nice. Like, you're so nice." Because they know that, like, I'm there for them. I'm there to work with
yeah.
them to help them to get to what they need. It's not about me proving my merit through them. It's me trying to help them to
Yes.
find theirs.
I think that's a fantastic framing for all teaching. 'Cause I think
Yeah,
there can
oh,
be
for
a
sure.
pressure to
Completely
just make
agree.
yeah, like I'm gonna make myself sound smart because I'm educated, and like not that I need to make myself sound smart, but I have a pressure from others to be the smart one, whereas I can
I get
just
it.
not do that.
Mhm.
I had a tour director actually who on like an EF tour last year I went on, Michael Spellman shout out, but he taught ESL in Italy when he was
Ooh.
younger. Yeah, very cultural. I remember, yeah, super interesting guy. He's never owned a house or a car, and he just does tours and acting. Very, very different cat. And anyway, but he said he would start the lesson the second any of his students stopped speaking in English. I was like, that's so interesting. Like you would go in the second you come into this room,
Interesting.
like we're only going to use English words, but the second you start getting like stuck, that's what we start introducing. I thought that was such a simple philosophy of just like
It is. And it
piggybacking
makes
on what
sense.
they, yeah, because like you learn through speaking and like control in a controlled environment. He said sometimes they wouldn't even have a lesson because they would just be
Well
talking the whole
played.
time. And I was like, this guy, but he gets it. Like, work smarter, not harder. Like, you don't have to have this
Yeah,
fancy
for
lesson plans.
sure.
Like, no, we're just going to talk it out. I was like, okay, okay, I
Yeah,
see you.
that's so well played.
Yeah. And again, even I'm thinking now in my boring, so as what says my students, social studies classes, you could be like, okay, the second we stop talking about social studies, I'll start teaching. I'll start yapping. I feel like that could be a
It's
good way to, yeah.
so
I
good.
know. We're learning all the learnings here together.
Yeah, I love it.
And so, how long have you been in teaching now?
This is my 17th year of teaching.
18 years. Okay. So, I'm
Mhm.
going to ask you, I'm going to take out my book of cliches here. No, I'm just kidding. But
Well,
like,
here we go.
what is the profession missing that maybe it had before or has never had but needs to get to?
In my opinion, it's missing relevance.
No,
I'm
that's
just
crazy.
saying because the stuff, think about it. Like the stuff that we do now, like we really need to reassess how we teach and what we do. Like it's just not conducive to the average kid nowadays. Like if that's the goal, we need to revisit, like throw it all out and start try again. Like we just really reassess and rework the system that exists, because the relevance of it is really few and far between. Like
Yeah, like my dear students, we've spent like 2 weeks on circumference and diameter and radius of a circle. And I'm just like, even
you're
I'm
like,
bored,
why?
guys. Like, I get it. Like, we got it. It's part of the curriculum. We go through it. We go through the motions. And I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know how to. So I guess, what do you think? Would there be like a new subject? I'm just kind of like thought experimenting here. Like, could you do, because literacy and numeracy seem to be the main initiatives almost everywhere where kids are just taking more math and more ELA.
Hmm.
But I did hear from an American professor that I spoke to one time that some states don't even have social studies or civics in like
Yeah,
certain grades or certain
it
levels. So,
varies.
okay. Yeah. And so I guess, is that something that you think kind of needs more of a focus versus some of the other things, or like,
Not necessarily the subject, those types of subjects itself, but more of like we're in school for 7.5 hours. Why? Why are we in school 7.5 hours? Yes, okay, it does help parents who are working, whatever, for us to have the kids in school that long, whatever. But no kid needs to be in the school 7.5 hours. It's just not necessary anymore. Now, obviously, at the younger levels, when they're still growing, developing, meeting milestones, things like that makes complete sense. Once they're at the high school level, I'm like, you need to spend half a day in the classroom and half a day on the job. Like, there's no
Yeah.
reason you should be in here 7.5 hours a day.
Yeah. Like you can literally
And
drive here.
I'm not trying to be dismissive, but I'm just saying the majority of the stuff at our high school level, these kids can Google or YouTube.
I know I never use YouTube on my job. I would never use that. It's a horrible resource to use for your classroom. Definitely not Crash Course, but I agree. Like I think that we're seeing like all my like brothers, aunts, uncles, like they're all talking like, "Oh, I did this exact same course, this exact curriculum like 15, 20 years ago." And I'm like, I don't know why change is so fast everywhere else, but it's so
Mhm.
slow in our systems because it's not like there isn't a precedent for fast changing. And be it as it may, I guess I was evaluated recently, and the something that we talked about was like educational best practices.
Mhm.
So, what comes to mind when you think of like, okay, this is an educational best practice? Because I think most new teachers, most experienced teachers will say like, this is an impossible job. Like, there's so many ideas, so many things to do, and there's only a certain amount of time. So, what comes to mind of an educational best practice?
And I don't know if this is exactly what you're looking for, but in my opinion, an educational best practice is if the teacher has a strong relationship with her students. If she can have a relationship with her kids, that is going to take you from beginning to the end of your career. Whenever I teach a PD session or even sometimes when I speak and do a keynote, I often start off by saying, dude, if you're trying to make it to retirement, you need to bond with your kids. Like
Yeah.
it won't work otherwise. Like you're going to be constantly driving yourself insane if you cannot connect with the kids on some type of level because of the fact that it is necessary to, like I tell admin even when they come in, I'm like, I'm on this side. So I don't know what you want me to do. I'm on the kids side because I need them, I see them a lot more than I see you. So
Well, and that's kind of the sad part too of like I know that you had like Principal Lamb on. You were talking with him recently about
yes, he's
like the
awesome.
he is awesome. I love his page, but he's talking about like not having an office and being more present in classrooms, and that's kind of the overall idea of like his kind of shtick there. And but it is sad that that's kind of like as you kind of grow in education, you literally like by the nature of it, you have to lose touch with the classroom, which is weird. Like that's kind of the weird hierarchy for growing in education. Obviously, you can probably choose to find more ways to be in the classroom, but even for myself, I was told it was a good thing that I monitored the room during my activity and checked in with
Yeah.
kids if they were doing like a kinesthetics, just moving around the room
Uh-huh.
activity and going from station to station, and I
Yeah.
was moving with them. So like my promise you, I'm not tooting my own horn here. And it was like, but that was what he said. Oh,
Sure.
that was a good. Oh yeah, like that was. Oh, this is my keynote, guys. I'm gonna do my round table activity. No, but that to me was like okay. But when he said best practice, like no one's ever said that phrase to me. So I guess like what comes to mind of like an activity or like a best way to do it? Is there? And I guess if it is relationships is kind of your main one, especially at the high school level,
Yeah.
is there a secret to building that quality relationships with high school students? Because I've found it pretty natural, like in my own experience in grade 11 and 12. But I guess what have you found to be a way that you often connect with your high school students?
Honestly, oh my gosh, there's so many ways that even in my PD I break down for teachers. One of the main things though is shifting the way that you think about things when it comes to students. Like when it comes to punishing a student, you know, think about see the potential while policing and punishing them. When it comes to talking with students, ask before you attack. Like don't just assume that, the student's guilty right off the bat. Like ask them, talk with them. Don't attack. Honestly, another one of my biggest things that I tell teachers that I feel helps most is like when you're talking to students, don't talk to them like they're your kids. Talk to them like you're in a staff employee relationship. Like they are your employee, not your child, because then you'll
Mm,
be careful in how you speak to them. Because we don't want our managers or bosses in any capacity to talk to us any kind of way. And sometimes if we regard our students as our children, then we tend to talk to them a little on the like iffy side.
Yeah.
But if you remember and try to give them that respect that you would ask that a boss give you, then it kind of curbs the way that you talk to the kids. So that's one of my best practices, I guess you could say.
Absolutely. Because I actually thought it's like the you're hired approach. Is that what you refer to? Yeah. Okay. I looked at, yeah, again, I'm just like all over your website. Don't worry.
Yeah.
But as I was looking at it, I was like, you know what? So many of the, and again, so many of the behavior kids, and I guess like that's a very general term, but the students who commit misbehavior, if you talk to them the same way that their parents would, that they're probably acting that way at home to that exact same situation. It's almost our job to do it differently.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that kind of makes sense. And you can keep that light on. You're all good. It doesn't matter.
Like, hey, good morning. I'm disappearing because it's getting dark outside.
It's all good.
Pretty sure you will see eyes and teeth.
My gosh. As you've been in this profession now for 17 years, what do you feel like are the most common mistakes that you see your fellow teachers make, either new or experienced? Biggest mistakes that you're like, I'm not going to comment on that in public, but in my mind, yikes.
Well, I just had a moment like that the other day. This teacher yelled at the kids because she yelled at the kids and trying to get them to be quiet. And she goes, if you don't want to be working at McDonald's the rest of your life, I suggest you be quiet. You don't talk to kids like that. Like, you don't insult them to correct them. Like, what are you doing?
First of all, McDonald's is delicious, so take that back.
And believe it or not, fun fact, my mom has worked at McDonald's since before I was born. She's been working there for since 1980. So like 40 years, I think. 44 years. Yeah.
Wow.
So it's like, don't be coming for my mama. No, it's like,
that's great.
Yeah, but no, it's like you don't insult students to get them to listen. That's not, it's not going to work for anybody.
Mr. Clark After Dark is also brought to you by Jumping Bean Coffee. Jumping Bean Coffee is a premium, fair trade organic and low carbon roasted coffee from the East Coast and is based out of Newfoundland. Some of their standout blends include the rich and flavorful Lighthouse Roast, the bold Deepwater Dark Roast, and of course the iconic Screech Rum flavored coffee. Whether you're supporting local, missing the taste of home, or simply looking to experience the best the East Coast has to offer, Jumping Bean Coffee has something for everyone. Click on the link today to secure your bag. And now, back to the show. No, I personally try to not yell at them. Like, I'll still yell, raise my voice to like do whatever and try and get their attention back. But to me, I find it never really goes well, and it'll immediately damage the relationship. And so, have you ever worked like in an admin gig at all, or have you ever taken that leap?
I was an admin for a year and a half. Oh, was it a year and a half? I think a year and a half at a small private school, at an elementary school for a year and a half. But I was a little too fun to be admin. Because I'm like, you need a sub, it's okay. I'll cover you. Like,
yes, like too giving almost. Yeah.
Too giving. Because I was like, I wanted them to have an opposite experience, obviously, of what I had. But because I had I wanted them to have an experience that was, beneficial in that capacity and stuff like that. But at the same time, it definitely turned out to be a little too lax. So I decided and declared that I'm not admin material.
I remember when I first started teaching. It was just about 4 or 5 years ago. Like, I walked in, I was like, one day I'm gonna be a principal. I'm gonna do my master's, and it's gonna be so good. I'll be the best leader of a school. And like a year in, I was like, oh my God! I was like, what is happening in these hallways and seeing what they have to deal with? I'm like, this is, you know what? Like, I'll talk some shit online on a podcast instead. I don't know. Like, I don't know what I'll do with my spare time. I don't know, but it's it definitely seems like if I was ever put in that position, I feel like I'd be the same way. Cause I'm too, like, it's not that deep. Like, it's just not.
That's exactly how I am. I'm like, it's not that serious.
Yes, like nothing is fatal. Like, I'm not gonna teach the best lesson ever and change their lives today. I'm gonna try. I'm going to go home. I'm going to try again tomorrow. Like, it's not actually that serious to me, but
no, I agree. I agree
And so
wholeheartedly.
that was like your year and a half, and so you kind of moved back into the classroom. So
Oh yeah, I was like, yeah, no, this isn't for me. I better go before something goes wrong. So that's what I did.
yes, yeah, that was I feel like same here. So and I won't keep you too much longer, but like I remember as I was kind
Right.
of going through, but we were talking about like you obviously have a very extensive presence on social media. You're making a lot of skits. You're putting a lot of funny content out there. And so, but I've noticed that you do a lot of social media work like for other people, other businesses. And I guess like what have you learned about using social media as a tool? Maybe
It is
building
a tool.
community, but like
Yeah,
yeah.
especially for the teaching community. Like it has built such a separate tribe that I wasn't expecting for it to create. It's literally created like a virtual teacher tribe, if you will. Like it's
Yeah.
honestly been something where I can connect with other teachers, not only just in a sense of like, 101 bestie material, but it's like
Yeah.
the things that they are too scared to say or they don't feel they can comfortably say, I say it humorously for all of us.
Yeah.
So today I remember one of the teachers said at school, she was like, "Oh my gosh, you say stuff," and I'm like, "Yeah," but I'm like, I can't like it because they're gonna know I agree.
So I think that
Yeah.
that brings up another question because I think the classic for university level is like, oh, a professor gets tenure and they say whatever they want. You know what I
Yep.
mean? That's kind of how it goes. But I guess what are the things that teachers are too afraid to say themselves, do you think?
I think if I had to guess what they were too afraid to say, is anything that's like, like when it comes to like the stuff that admin says that are mandated that we are all like, there's no reason for us to have to do that. But we know that it comes down to admin adheres to district adheres to school board. So it's like we
Yeah.
all just do it because that's what it comes down to. But at the same time, I noticed that when I talk about like days off and getting adequate leave, if I talk about things like data and the ridiculousness of it, teachers are like, all agree, but they're too scared to agree.
Yes. Well, they all agree in private. Like they'll all kind of say the same
Yeah.
things in private, and then it's like the second that,
Mhm.
and then
Well,
like the
if it's
principal, they have to like keep their like no, like this is what we do here, like this is our system and whatever. But and I like I respect that. Like I understand. I'm not in
well,
that position,
yeah.
but
Yeah, and if it's something that's, like, current in our district or current in our school, the
mhm,
teachers who are current in my district or current in my school, those are the ones who are like, "I'm so glad you said it, but I couldn't do it."
yeah, I know. My favorite is the whenever you have a teacher that you know is leaving or that is like going to a different job, they're like, I'm gonna lay it down. I'm like, this is
Yep,
crazy. I've
yep.
had a few teachers I know like quit mid year and like probably a dozen so far. And like the conversations that they'll tell me about, like about talking to admin and after, I'm like, you know what? Not wrong.
Yeah,
There's some
you're like,
great there's some I'm like, oh man, like no,
I can see where you got
I
that.
totally disagree with you. Even though my eyes itchy here, like I don't know, that's kind of the what I've
Yeah, but no, it's like, I can
noticed as
see where
well.
you got that, but it's like
Yeah, so I think that's kind of been most people's experience. And so you obviously have a very good sense of humor. So if you
what?
do you know Brandon Jenkins? Like all of
Yes,
Brandon
Brandon, love
so
him.
yeah, so I had him on last week. So your guys' episodes will kind of go out in tandem. But on that episode, I shared a very embarrassing story of myself of using my dead dad's weed. So I'll let your mind wander with that one. And
That's
but
interesting.
so it'll be my opening bit one day, I promise. And then
I
so
love it.
for the with the whole discussion was like, what are the story like what's the extent to which you'll share personal funny stories with your students? Like what is like
Yeah,
the
there's no
worst
limit.
so like what's the most like embarrassing story that you share with students, do you think? Because like my rule is like, you know what, like you never say anything sexual, like you never say anything about like your marriage or anything. So those two things are like those are off limits for
Yeah, those are
talking with.
taboo topics.
But
Yeah, we
like
don't yeah.
well, my joke was just long story while you're like thinking of yours there was like I always say don't do drugs as my students leave. I'm like, yeah, have a great day, live, laugh, learn, don't do drugs, like seize the day, whatever. And
Mhm.
then they ask me like, why do you always say that? And I'm like, well, I'll tell you. And so I don't come at them like, oh, like I did this weed one time. Like, it's not trying to be cool. It's just like I messed up.
Yeah.
My wife was very upset with me.
Yeah,
And
you're like,
but
that was a bad move.
yeah, it was not a great move.
Well, and think about it though. Stories like that do, give our students pause, and it does
Yes.
help them to think like, okay, maybe I shouldn't, whatever. I don't know. I just feel like there shouldn't be a limit, outside of the
Yeah.
obviously the boundaries that you mentioned.
Yes.
But I
Yeah.
don't feel like there should be any type of like extreme taboo stuff because of the fact that kids, they learn from our experiences. Like they know, like, dude, that was stupid. I ain't gonna do that. You know what I mean? I think, helping the kids to see that we're real people helps as well. Like we're not untouchable. We have mental health struggles. We have whatever, just like them. Like we can see them. We're not so far up here that we can't be at their level. As far as an embarrassing story, I can't think like, oh, I embarrassed
I knew it
myself
wouldn't
with
take
one of
long.
my students big
Okay.
time. We did a field trip to DC, and you know what they call the mall, which people are like thinking like store shopping mall, but I'm talking about the
Yeah.
National Mall.
Okay.
And so in the National Mall in DC is where like the monuments are, and like where they do the inauguration sometimes is like at one side of the, anyway. So the mall is where all of our like national landmarks are for our capital,
Mhm.
of the United States. And so in DC, in the middle of this place, picture like big old ancient monuments, not ancient because we're not technically that old, but old
Ancient
monuments.
century old things.
Exactly. Old monuments, greenery, sidewalks, fences, gates, whatever. And my students say, Miss Robb, I dare you to jump that fence. And I'm like, you guys know I don't tear down a dare. I cannot turn down a dare. Oh my gosh. Me in a skirt.
No.
I could totally like clear this
Oh
fence.
yeah.
No big deal.
Yeah. Of course.
Clear it.
Easy to work.
Go over. My first leg and foot make it over. My back leg and foot do not make it over. I get hung. It flips me over the fence, upside down, legs in the air, skirt and over my face. Yeah,
Nice. Nice. We
mystery.
call that arse over kettle in Newfoundland.
There you.
Yeah, that's yes, very specifically with that's crazy. So one of the other things that I've been talking about recently, and thank you for sharing this story. That's great. Is I do
When I broke 2
find
toes in that. I broke 2 toes because I got caught on the fence. Anyway.
did you have to pay a gnarly premium for that in
Yeah, I'm pretty
DC?
sure. Yeah, actually, I don't
Yeah,
think I actually even went to the doctor. I was like, it's okay, it'll heal.
it's only two. I got eight more. It's fine, right? Um,
It's a wall.
and so one of the things that I again in my brief experience as a teacher that like most people are like progressively more burnt out. It's kind of like the age old story at this point. But
Yeah.
why do you think that so many people lose that intrinsic motivation that put them into the profession in the first place? Because like we all know it's going to be hard. We all know it's going to be like the reward is the work in some sense. So like when you
Mhm.
go into it, there's like a bit of like nobility attached to it still, but that's all stemming from an intrinsic drive to help and be of service. So why do you think that teachers eventually become like disheveled and just kind of disgruntled?
Honestly, it's because they forget who they're trying to please. That's what I think the struggle comes in, is when they forget who they're trying to please. It's not about pleasing, admin or some goal or whatever. It's about being there for the kids and just enjoying the kids, helping them to get to where they need to get to. Because the moment you put like a price tag or a level of achievement on your ability to teach, you lose sight of your whole point in being there. That should not be the goal. Like, if y'all ever made Teacher of the Year, I would cry. And not because I was happy, but because now the attention's on me and I got to act a certain way. I ain't doing it. Okay?
Yeah.
This is about me and my kids, not about me pleasing some admin or some board or
Mhm.
checking some box. It's about me and my kids, and not even me, really. It's about my kids, like I said earlier, helping them to see their merit rather than me proving mine. That's where it comes in, because you get burnt out quicker. You get to the point where you're disheveled and all the things because you're trying to meet some unrealistic expectation that was thrust upon you by somebody in some higher power versus you yourself realizing that, listen, this is the goal. I'm here for me and my kids. It's not about checking some box.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I had a conversation with someone about like the national board certification in the
Yeah.
US being like
Yeah.
very intense. And I'm like, you know what? If I did all those things every day, my life would be awful. Like,
Yeah.
that
No,
would
I'm with
be
you.
like so much work and you're doing so much. But so to every time I have a new guest on, I always kind of wrap up with these two infamous quotes that I would especially love your commentary after hearing about some Christian comedy. A person that goes from driving the middle school bus to Christian comedy to going arse over kettle,
background,
arse
right?
over kettle in Washington D.C. in front of their classroom.
Mm-hmm.
And the quote is,
I love arse over kettle. It's my favorite breed so far.
if you ever go to Newfoundland, you probably won't, but you can definitely use that, and they will love it. But the quote is, "Don't let school get in the way of your education." So I guess, what do you think are some of the things that have helped you be successful that you wouldn't necessarily have learned in the classroom?
Has helped me to be successful that I haven't learned in a classroom?
Yeah, like things about like relationship
Honestly,
building and who you are.
it's honestly like everyday life. Like growing up the way that I grew up, I didn't grow up traditional at all. Mine is more of the school of hard knocks in a sense. And so that in and of itself has taught me a lot. Honestly, like just like things that you can never learn in a school on survival and mindset and approach and those different things that have really made a difference in my development and growth as a person. Like a lot of that I did not learn at school. It's through experience, honestly.
And so to kind of piggyback that one, to kind of finish us off here, that's kind of like what you have learned about yourself. This one's more so, it's education is what remains once they forget everything they learned in school. So what is it that you want your students to take away from you that they wouldn't necessarily get anywhere else?
I'm so sorry.
That's all right.
I'm so sorry. Okay.
All right.
I would like, because I laugh because it's like, am I supposed to be the example? Because my poor kids, like I'm the person they got to live by.
One of the examples that will influence them.
Okay, so let's see. I would hope that my students walk away and say that Miss Robb inspired me to be better, like to be the person that I knew I could be, because I don't believe that difficult students are born difficult. That difficulty was birthed from something, and I'm trying to make it my goal and part of my mission to help them to see their true self, not the self that was thrust upon them, whether by their environment or choices that they've made, but by who they are. And so in doing that, I hope that my kids can go and say like, wow, Miss Robb really made a difference. Like I was headed this way, but she really shifted my thinking to think I can be better. I can do better. So yeah.
I love that. Okay, so to send us off here, Leslie Robb,
Okay.
what's the preamble message for GEDCA 2025 in Edmonton for hopefully some of my crew that will be listening and attending your keynote? Unfortunately, Mr. Clark will not be there this time around to see
I thought
you
it was comedy.
give the show.
So,
Yeah, please let it be so.
I thought it was just all comedy. Am I doing a keynote?
No. They had like a cash cab guy there last year, so like it's not that deep. Again, go off.
But I am doing comedy though, right?
Yes. Oh yeah.
Okay, I was gonna say Lucas don't throw me off. I'm gonna get up there and be like, Lucas told me I had to do a keynote. They're like, who's Lucas?
Lucas? Who's this Lucas guy?
Who's Lucas? Meanwhile, Stacy in the back. Okay, anyway. So
any message for that crew? Any message for that crew?
To get ready, guys. We're gonna have a lot of fun together. You're gonna be like, what? Because I share a lot of my hilarious stories from teaching that you probably can relate to. So you guys we're gonna have fun together. So yeah.
Love it. All right. Leslie Robb, thank you so much for coming on today.
This has been the Leslie Robb and Lucas show.
Heck yeah. Signing off.